Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the hardcore world, and today we have a mega build on our hands. Oh, you heard me right, we have a big juicer episode today. We're gonna be working on the big grand library of Whitebridge. So actually this grand library we're gonna be making is based off a cathedral, and it's gonna be a real cathedral as well when we make it. But we're kind of thinking, you know, maybe the Whitebridge people don't really care for religion anymore. They're all about their book smarts. And they're very like intellectual people, so they converted the church into a grand, awesome library. I've had a lot of fun designing this. I actually designed it on a few live streams. You guys could have seen them on YouTube here, so make sure to get subscribed and turn on notifications for live streams and all that fun stuff. And of course, where I've been staring at right here, this little amphitheater here, is where we're going to be building our mega build today. So the first thing I want to do is kind of extend out this platform a little bit. I'm just going to do this between cuts here because we also need to go resource gathering, because I need a lot of blocks, and a lot of blocks means a lot of time and mining and all that fun stuff. Oh, and crafting, of course. So without further ado, cue the montage. It's been a long day of resource gathering, but here it all is. All of the blocks we're gonna need for this mega build. It's actually not that many if you think about it, but a lot of it is the same block, just many stacks of all of the same. The worst, I would say, was probably the bookshelves and these beehives. These beehives got really expensive really quickly, and our bookshelves here, oh my gosh, I had to trade just with villagers to get these bookshelves, and it was absolutely ridiculous. Waiting days and days, Minecraft days, I should say, of trading all these emeralds, trading with our mason villagers to get iron and stuff. Oh my god, it was painful. But I'm sure some of you guys are asking, why are we even building this in the first place? One, it's very cool. And two, I want to keep all of my villagers in this village here. Whitebridge is our village area in our world. So we keep a lot of our villagers here, and we're trying to kind of theme a bunch of these buildings around like what they will be selling. So for example, over here we have our blacksmith and our loom guys. So these guys are going to, like, inside this building here, we're going to have a bunch of blacksmiths, our toolsmiths, weaponsmiths, whatever you want to call them. They're going to be hanging out inside this building here. And then on this little red guy here, we're going to keep a bunch of our loom villagers. I can't remember what they're called, carpenters maybe, but we're going to keep all those guys inside this building here, so I can come in here, trade up wool, trade up banners, whatever I need to do for those said villagers. And we're going to repeat the same pattern, but of course our librarians are probably our most important because, you know, enchantment books, whatever I need from them, very useful. They just have good trades overall, even glass. They trade for glass sometimes, which is pretty neat. So we're keeping them in this big old library we're going to make, and I also, you know, made out the platform here so you can get a better idea of our silhouette for this building and how big it's going to end up being. There's going to be little corners over here and then big old walls, full walls of bookshelves too. That's my big old plan. That's why I got so many. How many stacks was this again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 stacks of freaking bookshelves. Ridiculous. And thank goodness we worked on our temple a few episodes ago because we set up a villager breeder inside there. So now we can easily access some new villagers and bring them all the way over. You know, throw in some rails or whatever, some kind of janky rail system going down the mountain here. And we can throw them inside this library here. I'm kind of thinking we kind of shove them in the back over here. This little corner, we can set up some little, you know, carols, I think they're called, and we can set up some bookshelves, some lecterns for them to hang out. I did want them to be able to wander around the library, but unfortunately, it's really hard to control villagers. They are just so freaking dumb. I'm sure some of you guys know, but they will try their hardest to get themselves killed, and I would hate for my mending villager to come over here, find a balcony or something higher up, and just fall off and perish, and I'd be very sad to lose such a valuable member of our society. So anyways, I think that's enough blabbering. It's turning nighttime and it's getting scary, but I think we got to start working on our mega build. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the montage. You know, I thought it'd be kind of nice to interrupt this montage to go over a little bit of some of the techniques we're using in this build, and also just to show off the absolute scale of this thing, to get a little bit of a better idea of how this is going to end up looking in the village, because this is easily one of the biggest builds in the area, maybe minus the bridge, but even the bridge is kind of small in comparison to this behemoth of a cathedral slash grand library, of course. So one of my favorite little details of this build is actually the mosaic on the front here. We used a yellow and pink little palette here because they're nice, you know, they're nice colors. They blend into each other pretty decently. But mostly it's because I wanted some sort of interest here. And originally I was thinking some sort of sundial would be interesting here. You know, doing like blue on one side and then doing yellow on the other. But I ended up going with the pink just because I think the pink complements the yellow way more. But besides the actual mosaic here we have in the front, we even have some interesting shading techniques. As you can see, there's actually 2 layers of this arch right here. There's the front layer, which is a little bit more blocky. We have a lot of a bit more of a smoother arch on the back side than we do on the front. We're using a lot of fence gates and just solid blocks, slowly kind of creating a nice silhouette of an arch. And then we have 1 layer back, about half block, you know, like extruded out. We have a bit more of a darker layer as well because we're using a bit of the andesite and diorite. And we're using the andesite to kind of act as a shadow that in a way highlights the mosaic there. Because if we just kept it all white concrete or calcite or whatever, diorite, it would have kind of all looked kind of the same and it would have blended all together. But using a little bit of those darker shadows there, it highlights it and it lets the viewer know that there is another layer there that's a little bit more obvious to the eye. Then of course we have a bunch of arch shapes around here too, and I liked using these grates here because one of the whitebridge's kind of accent colors is the exposed, or maybe not exposed, weathered copper. So I wanted to implement that some in the building, and up top there you can see there's some lightning rods. And eventually, once we get the, you know, copper rod or the copper update and we get the new copper rods and everything, these will become weathered and they will look super pretty and kind of match the whole theme of whitebridge. Then one of my favorite parts about this build is actually the spires up front here. This is obviously, these 2 on the sides are taken straight from the Westminster Church, and so is this whole front facade, I should add on real quick. But obviously we've taken a way different direction than the Westminster Church because it is a brick building with white stripes going through it, and we said let's make it all white. And you know, there's obviously a lot more of you know, religious indications inside the mosaics and just art in general and like sayings and text and everything all over the place, and we've stripped all of that away. But I also really like these little spikes added in here in the middle because it creates a nice little bend line here that doesn't distract too much from these guys and also kind of makes them feel a little bit more like homogenized with the rest of the build and makes it make just a little bit more sense, a little bit more cohesiveness with these little spikes here in the middle. But now if we head on into the inside, you can see I have not done anything else here. I kind of did some of the walls on the side here of these spires, but I think it's time for us to start doing the side walls, and we'll probably do the back as well just because the rest of this build is very similar palette here. Oh, I should go over the palette a little bit. The palette here we used is absolutely fire. I'm really happy with the direction I decided to take this because we went with a little bit of a cooler toned building because we do use a lot of these greens inside the build, and green is, you know, complements blue. So blue is our color that we're kind of using for our shadows. You can see we have a little bit of clay up there. Then from clay, we go into either white concrete or we go into diorite or even sometimes the light gray concrete there. And we use those a lot in the shadows, and they kind of act as a little bit of a highlight, but also as a darker spot for said shadows. And we use a little bit of andesite for the darkest part of our shadows, ignoring the, you know, the tough lines that we have throughout the building here. Then of course we transition into the diorite, and then we go into like white wool, white concrete powder, and calcite. Those are kind of our main palette colors. And then diorite is more of our mandatory block we have to use because of the lack of wall colors for white in this game. Unfortunately, diorite is our only wall. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, why didn't you use more pale wood? You can see there's a little, you know, occasional dots of pale wood, usually just in signs or in fence gates and sometimes the trap doors and everything. But some of you guys are going to be like, why didn't you use pale wood inside the actual palette? And it's because pale wood is a lot more pink and a little bit more warm in that sense because of the tint of pink. It tends to lean more towards warmer colors. And like we said earlier, we're sticking more towards the lighter blue colors, a cooler effect on the whole building. So like I did over here, we used a bit of the cooling of the clay, but we also threw in a little bit of the mushroom stems because they're a bit warmer. But it's a little bit of an interesting choice on these buildings. I think they work just because you're a little bit closer to them and you see a bit more of the texture. And I think the texture helps a lot with the darkness in this context, in this distance from it. But when you add more scale and more distance, the mushroom stems tend to stand out a lot more than they typically do. So I feel like in this, in this context, the mushroom stems do not quite work, just like the pale wood. Also, here's a nice little shot of it at nighttime. I really wanted to include a bunch of lights to really, highlight some of the, the architecture of the building. Because also, when you see a lot of these older buildings in real life, especially ones that are, architectural marvels, they tend to light them up pretty well, especially from the ground up, and they have like these big spotlights kind of lighting up certain aspects of the building and everything. So we're kind of replicating that with some end rods at the base here, and then a lot of candles elsewhere for a little bit more subtle lighting. But it still lights up the building very well, and it looks very pretty at nighttime with the lighting and the shading and everything. Ooh, man, I'm absolutely in love with this building. Oh, I'm so happy with it. All right, but I think that's enough yapping about how awesome this build is. Let's get it finished, and we got to work on the big old walls here. There's gonna be some other cool architectural designs I implemented into this building. A lot of really cool, it's a bit more gothic maybe. I had to take some liberties when it came to, when it came to the sides of the building, because the Westminster Church building sides are very boring and very plain. They're very just like flat sides, sometimes a curved roof or a dome roof or just some craziness going on. And this building is a little bit more viewable from the sides, unlike the Westminster Church. So we had to take our own liberties, but I think we did a fantastic job. But enough yapping about it. Let's get back to the montage. The exterior of this library is complete and is looking absolutely magnificent. We got all of the sides done, and will I say, I love the side design we have on this building. Look at it. It's beautiful. It's very simple, but we have a lot of intricate designs. We have some big old arches over here. We have some really smaller ones with a bunch of glow lichen in there. Kind of look a little mosaic-y, if you will. And we, of course, have some flying buttresses in there because those are really fun shapes to work with. And I think they work really well, especially up here on this little platform, little walkway that we can check out in a second here when we head on to the inside. Okay, but before we go inside here, you guys want to see something that I can't unsee? All right, too bad, I'm showing you. So look, the diorite texture here on the bottom half, it's unaligned with this with the texture on the front. Look, the line here, and it goes like that. It looks so bad. Like, I don't know why I've never noticed this, but now I've noticed it, and I hope it's just a resource pack I have or something, because this is, it hurts my mind, and now you guys have to bear the burden of this knowledge too. All right, but anyways, here is our beautiful interior here. We have a lot of the shaping done already, but we are missing a lot of intricate details and all that fun stuff. But before we get into any of the interior work, let me take you guys on a little bit of a tour on what we got going on inside here. So first, you can see we have our 3 main windows here in the back, and these just look really nice. We even like kind of outlined them with a little bit of an arch on this side here with 2 different sized ones. I think this looks really, really nice. It's just kind of having a nice little staggering effect with the one in the middle being a little bit taller. We really wanted to focus on like arches everywhere, and I really wanted the ceiling and stuff to look appealing when you look up. So like having little intricate arches, very small amount of ones, just kind of hanging out around the area. Let me get sleep real quick so it's a little bit brighter in here. We even have these big old pillars here kind of leading up to the top, just acting as nice little support for how big and tall this building is, especially like this side of the building. As if we head up through our fancy little spiral staircase here, using a lot of these candles on levers and like using these candlesticks here. Just want to get a little bit of the lighting done in here because otherwise this place is a mob farm. But if we head all the way up this spiral staircase, you can see here is our balcony area. You get a nice little view of Whitebridge. If you come out over here, you get to see the whole downtown area from the front. It looks very awesome. Using some hanging signs as a nice little like fence gate for the inside here, and then we have our nice little walkway on the sides with the flying buttresses and a nice little arch underneath it. I think it's very pretty. I based this arch off of that one over there. I think it's 1 block shorter, and there's a little bit less detail in it just because I couldn't use as many stair blocks as I wanted to. I'd have to make this whole thing, I think, 1 block wider, which is okay. I think that one looks really good, but these look pretty fantastic as well. A little bit messier just because we wanted to include a little bit more shading into it. We'll see how I feel about that maybe in the future, but I'm pretty happy with it, at least from a distance. Up close, it's a little meh. Then we have another balcony walkway over here with a nice little view out into the forest. Maybe in the future we can work on some cool, terraforming back here just so there's a little bit more of an interest to look over there. And then same thing over here. We have a nice little walkway leading up to the other side. And then lastly, we have our big copper domes on the top here. I think this was a feature that actually the Westminster Church also has, and I wanted to replicate it. So we use copper because copper, obviously, like we said earlier, is our accent block to all of our whites here. So this is pretty simple. Now you can notice we have some copper grates kind of shining through here, and even some of the pale doors right there. Now we have these big old glass windows, and my idea was that during the daytime, the light from these windows is shining through, going diagonally over here. So we have some natural lighting kind of helping light up the floor area down there during the day. Now, I did it right above the windows because ideally they would be going diagonally, and like this would be the light from this window and that would be this one. But of course, to get that natural light, and we have to go straight from above. So it's a little like odd, but the idea is there. You'd use a little bit of your imagination to imagine that this light is lighting up over here and then this light is lighting up over here. All right, but now we can get started on some interior work. Now first, we need to install the actual library of this place. We're gonna make a big old bookshelf wall on this side and on this side as well. And I think we can have a little bit of fun with this too. I think I want there to be like multi-layered kind of shelves where like, and then maybe some ladders going up to each layer. They don't necessarily need to be accessible. I think only this bottom layer here is going to be accessible for us to actually use, to maybe put, enchanted books and stuff inside there, and we could label it all with signs in the future. But for now, let's get the bookshelf installed. All right, now this feels way more like a library. Now, obviously, we got some chiseled bookshelves in here with some looms too, just for a little bit of variety. But I'm all out of books because, I had to make the bookshelves, and so I can't populate these chiseled bookshelves quite yet. But maybe in the future, we'll have them fully populated with like enchanted books and everything. But as you can see on these lower sections, I have a lot of these chiseled bookshelves just so I can access them and actually try to utilize them a little bit. Maybe we throw up some signs and it's all like, sharpness books over here and, all that fun stuff. Okay, but the first thing we actually should have done is replace the floors because we're not sticking with these lonely, boring stone floors. We're gonna make a nice little floor pattern. We're gonna use, I think, beehives. Those guys right there. I love the top texture on these. Boom, look at that top texture. It tiles very well. It's a nice little like established floorboard. I love the texture of it, but we're gonna do that and a little bit of a pattern with some oak stripped wood, I think, just kind of around it. We're gonna do something like this maybe, and then we'll rinse and repeat that throughout the entire place. And it's raining. Thank God we're inside. All right, the floorboards are installed and they're looking very floorboardy. But this place is starting to really come together. I'm really a big fan of the oak floors that we got going on, and this dark oak little This dark oak little platform up here as well. This is supposed to be kind of like the pew, I think it's called, or wherever, like, the, you know, if this was a church, an old church, this is where the priest, yes, the priest would stand and, you know, give his sermon or whatever. But obviously it's been refurbished, so this is like the book return or some sort of like book checkout area, just right up here, kind of chilling. Now we got to install a bunch of desks here because I have been inspired by the Boston Public Library. If you're unfamiliar what the interior of that place looks like, it looks like these. I put an image on screen. Hopefully editor Barce remembers that. But essentially those green lamps that you see on all of the tables, I really want to recreate that because I think it's such a nice little color pop. And they're like interesting to look at. And I think they're really cool just in general. So I want to install a bunch of desks going along the sides on both of these sides, and a nice little, like, you know, middle walkway going through the middle here. And I think for those lamps, we're going to try to use armor stands and leather helmets, and we're going to dye them a very specific color. It's going to be a process. Do not fret. I will be trying to bring you guys through the pain of doing armor stand stuff. All right, but first let's make all these desks. All right, it's been 30 minutes because I had to gather a bunch of freaking leather and kill all my cows. But we have the leather helmets all dyed and ready for us to use. Now, here's a strat you guys are ready to learn from me. So normally when we place down these candles here, we can't place down an armor stand here anymore. And normally I would use pistons and stuff to kind of push this guy around, but we can actually do this right here. I learned this on the live stream. We can place down our armor stand and even the helmet inside of this dispenser here, and we can activate it. Boom, armor stand, and then boom, helmet on. And look at that. Now we have our lampshade, and I think that looks pretty good. I like the look of it, so very nice. And now we just got to repeat that like freaking literally 19 more times, and then we'll have the lampshades all set up here, and it'll look very freaking sick. Let's get started on it. All right, the tables are all set up now with the lamps, and we got even chairs in here. I even threw in a few pressure plates and some of these bamboo ones here. They kind of look like papers or like books, maybe. A little bit more abstract. I know some of you guys could, you know, maybe get a little bit more detailed using armor stands and all that fun stuff, but I simply just do not have the time or honestly the patience for it. Now there's one last thing I do want to add to this magnificent building here. I want to add in 2 chandeliers. I think one up there and one up there coming down from the domes. And I might end up adding a chandelier right here to kind of cover up the mosaic here because I couldn't find any other way to cover it up. I could have like extended out the wall a little bit more, but I think it looked a little bit awkward and like it would have been kind of a tight access to the staircases on the side. So I decided to kind of keep this open, but I think if we put a chandelier in front of it, it'll kind of obscure the view of this a little bit more. But yeah, let's add in some chandeliers, and I think that'll be it for our interior work in this building. And just like that, our chandeliers are installed. These are actually the design I made for the art museum, and I brought them over to this beautiful, magnificent building. I think they fit really well, you know, kind of contrast with the green roof up there. But pretty much our interiors are done here. This building, I would say, is pretty much 99% complete. Now, that 1% is actually right here in the corners where we're going to put some librarians. And I think I'm going to do that some other time, maybe on a live stream, maybe just between episodes. Who knows? I have to move villagers around, and that's never very fun. But if you do want to catch a live stream in the future, make sure to join the Discord below, discord.gg/barce. You can turn on notifications for live streams and YouTube uploads to see whenever I make stuff. Yeah, most of this building was designed in a live stream, so if you're interested in ever catching that, make sure to join the Discord as well. But anyways, y'all, I think that's gonna do it for this magnificent build. This was a lot of hours put in, so make sure to get subscribed. And if you want to support the channel and support me, consider joining as a member. You can join this prestigious list you see on the left side of your screen. But that's going to do it all, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!